Well, hey there everybody, welcome back to Smooth Brain EDH, where we make the smoothest plays with the biggest brains. If you end up liking this video, or have liked any of our previous ones, be sure to check us out on social media, like Twitter and Instagram. You can catch us posting updates, previews, and behind the scenes. Links will be in the description and at the end of the video. For today's video, we've got Cody piloting Koma, Ethan piloting Koll, Cameron on Orvar, and Corey on Toski. Now let's talk a little bit about each deck, starting with Koma. At first glance, Koma appears to just be another creature/token deck, whose main goal is to gum up the board with creatures and then use cards like Overwhelming Stampede and Triumph of the Hordes to win. But the deck can actually be pretty controlling if it needs to be. It runs counter spells and removal spells, and not to mention, if Koma's out, Cody can choose who blocks, who attacks, and what can and can't activate its abilities based on Koma's ability. Up next is Ethan's Koll deck. This equipment combo deck tries to go infinite with its commander Koll. All he needs is a free creature spell, a free equip equipment, and a sacrifice outlet, and Koll will let him cast, equip, and sacrifice infinitely. Alright, up next is Cameron and Orvar. This deck has two game plans. Firstly, he tries to gain as much advantage as possible from Orvar's copying ability. He's playing a lot of permanents that will help him gain advantage over his opponents, and he's hoping that Orvar will be able to make token copies of them. And secondly, he can win through commander damage. He's running a lot of creatures and artifacts that can pump Orvar, and hopefully over a couple turns he can kill someone with commander damage. And last but not least is Corey playing Toski. This mono-green creature deck is hoping to gain a lot of card advantage with its commander Toski. He plays unblockable and death touch creatures to incentivize his opponents not to block so he can draw cards while Toski is out. At the end of the day, Toski's trying to win with effects like Craterhoof Behemoth and Triumph of the Hordes. Alright, after seeing our commanders, I'm getting really excited for this game. Let's see the hands that everyone decided to keep. Up first is Cody, who kept two snow-covered islands, Basalt Monolith, Finn the Fangbearer, Coiling Oracle, AC Tyrant of Gyre Straits, and bottoms Triumph of the Hordes. Up next is Ethan, who kept a Plains, Prismatic Vista, Fabled Passage, Talisman of Conviction, Grim Monolith, Draenith Magistrate, and an Idyllic Tutor. Next is Cameron, who kept Seat of the Synod, Lonely Sandbar, Expedition Map, Mimic Vat, Aquatex Will, Muldrifter, and Nezahal Primal Tide. And lastly is Corey, who kept 4 Forests, a Thought Vessel, Cultivate, and an Asceticism. Alright you guys, let's get into the game. I know it's going to be an exciting one. Cody wins the die roll and starts his turn off with a snow-covered island and passes to Ethan. Ethan also plays a land, but this time a Fabled Passage. He cracks for a mountain and then passes to Corey. Corey plays a forest and passes to Cameron. Cameron plays Seat of the Synod and casts Expedition Map, the only person with a turn 1 play. He passes to Cody. Cody plays his other snow-covered island and passes to Ethan, praying for a forest. Ethan plays a Plains and then taps 2 and casts Grim Monolith. He then taps Grim Monolith for 3 and casts Talisman of Conviction. He then taps Talisman, taking a damage, and casts Draenith Magistrate. Everyone is now frustrated with him. Ethan then passes to Corey. Corey plays a forest, then taps for 2, casting Thought Vessel. He passes to Cameron. And on his turn, Cameron plays an island and then cracks Expedition Map. He passes while searching, but he ends up finding a Cloud Post. Cody plays another snow-covered island and then taps for 3, casting Basalt Monolith. He passes to Ethan afterwards. Ethan plays an Inventor's Fair as his land for turn and then moves to combat, swinging Draenith Magistrate at Cody for 1 damage. He then passes to Corey. Corey plays another forest as land for turn, then casts Cultivate, finding 2 forests and putting 1 to his hand and 1 to the battlefield tapped. He passes to Cameron after that. Cameron plays a tapped Cloud Post and then passes to Cody. Cody gets very excited because he finally finds a snow-covered forest, and he plays it as his land for turn. Cody then casts a Coiling Oracle and reveals Sakashima's Will off the top. Because it's not a land, it goes to his hand. Cody passes, but on his end step, Ethan taps 4 mana to untap Grim Monolith, but in response, Corey Nature's claims it, and Ethan gains 4 life. And now on his turn, Ethan plays a Prismatic Vista and then casts Paradise Mantle. He then equips it to his Draenith Magistrate, and then fetches with Prismatic Vista, finding a Plains to the battlefield. He then casts Idyllic Tutor, searching his library and finding Heliod the Sun Crown to his hand. Ethan then goes to cast Koll, but Cameron Arcane denials it. Ethan then passes the turn to Corey. And on Corey's upkeep, Ethan draws 2 and Cameron draws 1. Corey plays a forest as land for turn, and then taps for 2, casting 3 visits. He searches his library for a forest and puts it onto the battlefield untapped. He then taps for 5 and casts Asceticism, and then he passes to Cameron. On his turn, Cameron plays an island and then taps for 4, casting Sower of Temptation, gaining control of Ethan's Draenith Magistrate. He passes to Cody afterwards. And on his turn, Cody casts Sakashima's Will, targeting Cameron, and Cameron gives him the Draenith Magistrate. Cody then passes to Ethan. Ethan starts his turn off with a Battlefield Forge, taps for 3 to cast the Heliod he searched for, and then taps for 2 to cast Grinding Station. And then after thinking for a bit, he passes to Corey. Corey, who seems to only be able to draw a ramp, plays Blighted Woodland as his land for turn, and then pays 4 to crack it and search for 2 basic lands to the battlefield tapped. He passes to Cameron after that. Cameron plays a Lonely Sandbar as his land, and then taps for 3, casting Mimic Vat. He passes to Cody. And on his turn, Cody taps for 7, and casts Koma. Thankfully he got that Draenith Magistrate and was able to use it to make the extra green. He passes to Ethan, and Ethan cycles Forgotten Cave on his end step. And then on Ethan's upkeep, Cody makes a Koma's Coil. Ethan plays a Windswept Heath as his land for turn. He then casts Vandal Blast on Cameron's Mimic Vat, and then casts Cleansing Nova, destroying all creatures. In response, Cody sacrifices Koma's Coil to make Koma indestructible. Ethan then passes to Corey, and on his upkeep, Cody makes another Koma's Coil. Corey starts off with Toski, and then hard casts Search for Tomorrow, finding another forest to the battlefield. With nothing else to do, he passes to Cameron. Cody makes another Coil on his upkeep, and with the Draenith Magistrate finally gone, Cameron casts Orvar. He then casts Aquatek's Will, targeting Cloudpost. Orvar triggers, and he gets a token copy of it. Cloudpost gets a flood counter, and since Orvar is a changeling and is a merfolk, Cameron draws a card. Cameron then passes to Cody, and Cody makes another Coil on his upkeep. Cody casts a Mind Stone, and then just passes to Ethan, and on his end step, Ethan fetches with Windswept Heath. He finds a Sacred Foundry to the battlefield tapped. Cody makes another Coil on his upkeep, and Ethan gains 1 life to Inventor's Fair. And on his turn, Ethan casts a Swiftfoot Boots and passes to Corey. Cody makes another Coil on his upkeep, and Corey taps for 3 and casts a Thrashing Brontodon. Corey moves to combat and begins to swing Toski at Ethan, but Cody, for some reason, asks him to swing it at him, and lets it through, and Corey draws a card off of it. Corey, finally drawing some creatures, slams down a Tireless Tracker and passes to Cameron. Cody makes another Coil on his upkeep. The first thing Cameron does on his turn is tap for 5 and hard cast a Muldrifter, and draws 2 cards. He then plays an island, taps for 2, and casts Mind Stone. He passes to Cody, and on its end step, Cody untaps Basalt Monolith, and then makes another Coil on his upkeep. Cody starts his turn off by casting Sculptor of Winter. He then sacrifices Mind Stone to draw a card, plays a Snow-Covered Forest, and then taps for 2, casting Finn the Fangbearer. Forgetting he has 7 3/3 snakes to swing with, he passes to Ethan. And on his end step, Ethan sacrifices Inventor's Fair, searching up Skullclamp to his hand. Cody will make another Koma's Coil on upkeep. And on his turn, Ethan casts Priest of Urbrask. On ETB, he'll make 3 red mana. Ethan then uses this 3 red mana and a white to cast Koll again. No, not the dragon. He then casts Skullclamp and equips it to the Priest, drawing 2 cards. Koll bounces the Priest to his hand, and after that, he passes to Corey. Cody makes another Coil on upkeep. Corey starts his turn off by playing a Treetop Village as his land for turn, and making a clue thanks to Tireless Tracker, which he immediately sacrifices to draw a card. He then casts said card, which is a Tangled Florahedron. He then moves to combat. He swings Toski at Cody, Thrashing Brontodon at Cameron, and Tireless Tracker at Ethan. They all take it, and Corey draws 3 cards. Corey then casts In Search of Greatness and Relic of Progenitus before passing to Cameron. And on Corey's end step, Cameron casts Fleeting Distraction on his Muldrifter. Orvar triggers, and he makes a token copy of Muldrifter, and Cameron draws 3 cards. Cameron moves to his turn, and Cody makes another Coil. Cameron then plays an island for turn, and then casts Sakashima, copying Orvar. Cameron then casts Sway of Illusions, targeting Muldrifter. Both of his Orvars trigger, and he makes 2 more Muldrifters, drawing 4 cards. He moves to combat and swings 2 in the air at Cody, and 3 at Ethan. They both take the damage. Cameron discards 3 cards, and passes to Cody. Cody makes another Coil. Cody looks at the board, thinks for a little bit, and then passes to Ethan, after telling everyone he's saving his serpents to tap down anything anybody tries to do. He makes another Coil on Ethan's upkeep. Ethan plays a Blast Stone as his land for turn. After that, Ethan recasts his Priest, getting 3 red mana. Ethan then equips Skullclamp, bouncing the Priest to his hand and drawing 2 cards. Ethan then recasts the Priest, making 3 mana again, and re-equips the Skullclamp. The Priest is bounced, and Ethan draws 2 more cards. Ethan then recasts the Priest, and now realizing that he can do this several more times, Cameron reality shifts Koll in response to the ETB trigger from the Priest. Koll is exiled, and Ethan manifests the top card of his library. Ethan then gets his 3 red mana, and then uses it to cast his manifested card, Impulsive Pilferer. Ethan then casts Lotus Petal, then casts Boros Signet with the 2 floating mana. He then equips Skull Clamp to his Pilferer, drawing 2 cards and making a treasure token. And after a pretty long and eventful turn, he passes to Corey. Cody makes a coil on Corey's upkeep, and then Corey scries 1 to the bottom to In Search of Greatness. He then taps for 4 and casts Oracle of Moldiah. The top card of his library is revealed, and he plays a Forest, making a clue token. Corey then cracks the clue, drawing a card and revealing Hexdrinker on the top of his library. Corey then taps for 4 and casts Arasta of the Endless Web. Corey then moves to combat and swings Toski at Cody and Brontodon at Ethan. They both take it. And Corey draws 2 cards. Green Sun Zenith is revealed on the top of his library. Corey then casts Caustic Caterpillar, and then passes turn, and on his end step, Cameron casts Ghostly Flicker. He targets Cloudpost and Moldrifter, and makes a token copy of each of them. And after making the copy, and his other Moldrifter returns, he'll draw 4 cards total. And Corey makes a 1/2 Spider. Koma triggers on upkeep. Cameron decides to start his turn off with Bombshell, Agent of Treachery, and he gains control of Corey's Asceticism. Cameron then casts Clever Impersonator, and like a doof, before anyone lets it resolve, he says he's planning on copying Koma. Cody is not having any of that, and counters it with Frilled Mystic. It's countered, and then Cameron casts Stoneforge Masterwork. Cameron then equips it to Orvar, and then everyone plays Rock, Paper, Scissors, because Cameron is taking an extremely long turn. Cameron finally decides to move to combat, and swings 10 Commander at Ethan, who takes it. Cameron then casts Giga Drowse, targeting his Agent of Treachery, making 2 copies of it. And Corey gets another Spider. Cody makes a deal with Cameron, saying if he doesn't take Koma, he will not swing the Legion of Coils at him next turn. Cameron, mainly just wanting to draw 9 cards on his end step, just takes 2 of the 3/3 Serpents. He then moves to his end step and draws 9 cards thanks to the 3 Agent of Treacheries. He then discards 7 cards on his end step and passes to Cody. Cody makes another coil, and then plays Rimewood Falls as land for turn. Cody then casts Deep Channel Mentor, making all blue creatures unblockable. Cody then immediately swings 12 of the Serpents at Cameron and the Frilled Mystic. Before blocks, Cameron casts Artificial Evolution, targeting Agent of Treachery, changing its creature type to Zubera. Both Orvars trigger, and Cameron makes 2 more Agent of Treacheries. He attempts to take Koma and the Deep Channel Mentor. In response, Cody disallows the trigger trying to steal Koma. Corey makes 2 spiders from this interaction. Cameron gains control of Deep Channel Mentor and can now block the snakes. Cameron decides to block 5 of the snakes with Deep Channel Mentor, 2 of his snakes, and 2 Moldrifters, and takes 21 damage. Cody passes turn after that, and on his end step, Ethan Chaos Warps the Asceticism controlled by Cameron. Corey makes another spider, and Asceticism is shuffled into his library. He reveals Questing Beast off the top, and it goes to the battlefield. The turn is now shifted to Ethan, and Cody gets another Serpent. Ethan plays Spectator Seating as his land for turn, and then equips Skull Clamp to his Priest, drawing 2 cards. Ethan then casts Savine's Reclamation, targeting his Priest, and Corey makes another spider. In response, Corey pops his Relic, exiling all graveyards and drawing a card. Ethan then casts Mask of Immolation, it creates a 1/1, he then equips the Skull Clamp to it and draws 2 cards. Ethan moves to end step and discards a Marsh Flats. Corey misses his In Search of Greatness trigger, and Cody gets another coil token. Corey plays a land off the top of his library, thanks to Oracle, and makes a clue. He then plays another land off the top of his library, thanks to Oracle, and gets 2 clues. Before Corey can even get to combat, Cody spite taps Cameron's entire board by sacrificing 7 Serpents to Koma. Corey then moves to combat and swings 5 spiders, Questing Beast, Tireless Tracker, and Thrashing Brontodon at Cameron, but he accidentally forgets that Toski has to swing each combat. Cameron dies, and Corey draws 8 cards. And after combat, Corey matches Cody's 3/3 every turn by casting Tindershoot Dryad. He'll only make a 1/1 every turn, but he definitely has Ascended, technically making it a 3/3 every turn. Corey then casts Llanowar Elves, into Rampant Growth, into Hexdrinker, into Collector Roof, and then finally into Kenrith's Transformation on Cody's Koma. Corey decides it's finally time to pass the turn, and makes a 1/1 Sapperling on Cody's upkeep. Cody casts Mystical Tutor on his turn, and finds Whelming Wave to the top of his library. And Corey misses his spider trigger. Cody then casts Seedborn Muse, and passes to Ethan. On his end step, Ethan casts Swords to Plowshares, targeting Collector Roof. Oof is exiled, and Corey gains 2 life, and makes a spider. Ethan and Cody untap, and moving to upkeep, Corey makes a 1/1 Sapperling. Ethan starts his turn off by casting Tear on Kenny's Transformation, hoping to distract Corey for another turn. And Corey makes another spider. Ethan then casts Zerta, and equips Skull Clamp and Mask of Immolation to it, sacrificing it, dealing 1 to Hexdrinker, and drawing him 2 cards. In response to the draw triggers, Corey sacrifices Brontodon, blowing up the mask. But in response to that, Ethan sacrifices it to Grindstone, milling Corey for 3. Ethan then casts Crimson Kobolds, and equips Skull Clamp, drawing 2 cards. He then plays Ancient Tomb as land for turn, and then casts Runaway Steamkin, taking 2 to the Ancient Tomb. He equips Skull Clamp to it, and draws 2 more cards. He then casts Sigh of the Shinobi, untapping Grinding Station. With nothing left to do, Ethan passes to Corey. Corey and Cody make their respective upkeep tokens. Corey draws his card, and the top card of his library is Triumph of the Hordes. Corey cracks a clue, and draws a card. Corey then plays 2 lands, making 2 clues, then boots up Treetop Village and casts Triumph of the Hordes. It resolves. Corey moves to combat, and Cody tries to sacrifice 7 of his serpents to tap down 7 creatures. He hopes he has enough blockers after that, but with all these tokens, he doesn't, and Corey swings out, killing Cody with Infect. Corey, who swung with 11 creatures, draws 11 cards. Afterwards, Corey plays Reclamation Sage, blowing up Ethan's Skull Clamp. Corey passes to Ethan after discarding the hand size, and Ethan desperately tries to find a way out. He starts by casting Mox Diamond, pitching a mountain. He then recasts Koll, taking 2 to Ancient Tomb. Sigh of the Shinobi triggers, and to BM, Corey Croson Grips it. Ethan then flashes back Savine's Reclamation, getting back his Kobolds and Skull Clamp. Ethan goes to equip, but in response, Corey sacrifices Caustic Caterpillar, blowing up Skull Clamp. And it's at this point Ethan calls it and concedes the game. Hey guys, welcome to the end of the video. That was a crazy game, huh? I know it got a little cluttered at the end, but we had a ton of fun recording it for you guys. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and comment on the video too. Be sure to check us out on social media as well. We post updates all the time. And just so you guys know, we just opened a Ko-fi page where you can support the channel directly with small donations. The link will be in the description if you want to contribute. Thanks for watching.